I am still pretty giddy over last Sunday. Easter Sunday is just the highlight of the Christian year. So full of trumpet blast and victory. We stand and declare that God has been victorious over all of life's chaos. Death is conquered. We have this one voice of a shared faith. All of us, or at least most of us, but not all of us. Because there are some who are still not convinced the Easter victory is true. About 7 or 8 years ago, when I was on faculty at Mercer, I was involved with the Pastoral Institute in Columbus, Georgia. I was a kind of sort of adjunct faculty member there. I used to go teach leadership coaching when they would call on me. Sometimes it would be a clergy group, but this institute in Columbus is also involved in a lot of training with the Columbus businesses, Aflac, Synovus, for example. But on some of those training events, I would be the whole training part. But some, I would be part of the day, and some other trainer would be a part of the day. And so if I was not leading the training, I would participate in the training. One of these days, the trainer was doing something on personality type or learning style or something. It wasn't Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, but it was one of those kinds of instruments. And we were put into groups after we filled out the paper and figured out which group we were in. We were put into groups according to color. So those who tested yellow were put into this group, the blue group, you're to go over here, green group over here. And the exercise that I remember most is he said, I want you for 10 minutes to discuss your shopping habits as a group. There is something that all of you share in your group about the way you shop. Go. No more than that. We're just supposed to talk and go. But it worked. 10 minutes in, he calls time and has us report out. First group determined all of them were list makers. Everybody in the group shops from a list. There was one woman in the group who said that when she goes to the grocery store, she fills out the list in order of the aisles. Now that's ordered. That way she doesn't have to loop back. Somebody asked her, now what happens if you get to aisle 6 and think of something you should have gotten on aisle 2? She said, I'm coming back next week. All right. The group I was in figured that all of us do business with people we know. We like to know the names. We were the relational group. I get my hair cut from TJ. I buy my suits from Don. We all know the people. One of the guys in the group had moved an hour away from his longtime home in Birmingham. Once a month drives back to Birmingham because Tommy cuts his hair. Our group does business relationally. There was one group that was totally confused. Totally confused. They didn't understand this. The yellow group didn't know what we were talking about. They were the spontaneous group. They just shop. There are no patterns. One woman said, I don't get what y'all are talking about. If I'm at the mall and see a dress I like, I buy it. It's not that complicated. You don't need a list, and I don't need to know the name of the woman I bought it from. But then there is this last group, and their heads are about to explode on that report. Because the last group plans every purchase. Internet searches, consumer reports, they ask questions. Why did you buy that skill saw and not the one from Black & Decker? I need to know, I'm doing my research. There's no way they're going to stroll by the store, grab a saw off the shelf, and saunter on home. They do the research, every angle. You buy the right one. Well, nobody was wrong. Everybody just experiences the world differently. Everybody comes at the world with a different set of lenses, and it is certainly true in the Gospel of John following the resurrection. Nobody in this story is wrong. They're just all different. It was Sunday night, Easter Sunday. Jesus is raised. We find the disciples huddled in a house, doors locked. They're afraid. They're fretting because the Jewish power system is certainly after them now. They are targets more than ever. And then Jesus comes into their company and says, "Peace be with you." And he shows them the hands, the holes in his hands, the big gash in his side. And he says to them a second time, "Peace be with you." And now this gloomy group has become a party. The disciples rejoice. They're given the gift of the Holy Spirit. All of them granted this great gift of breath. Well, almost all of them. One of them wasn't there. Everybody but Thomas, the one they called the twin. Thomas was not with the others. So later, when they saw Thomas, they couldn't wait to tell him what had happened. "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas wasn't convinced. "Unless I see the mark and the nail in his hands, put my finger in the mark of the nails in his side, I will not believe." Now, some people over the years have been pretty hard on Thomas, doubting Thomas, as though he's only known throughout history for this one episode, kind of like the skier on the wide world of sports, right? I mean, the poor guy probably had a lot of great runs downhill, but he wipes out one time. It's the intro to the wide world of sports. That's all we know him for. Thomas, he's been there the whole time. He's sacrificed for the cause of Christ. He's given up things. He has shown his fidelity to the way. But all they know is doubting Thomas. It's just unfair. There's a cartoon. Thomas got his hands on his hips and says, "Come on, it's not like you say denying Peter." I mean, the guy needs to get a break. And historically, the church has been really hard on Thomas. The early preachers pounded him pretty good. Listen to this excerpt from a sermon from a 19th century Presbyterian minister. He's a man of gloomy spirit, prone to look on the dark side of everything, live in the shade. There was little in him of the bright, sunny, and hopeful, and hence he was not as ready to believe good news as bad. This frigidity of his temperament made him skeptical, hasty in coming to unfavorable conclusions. More recently, John MacArthur said, "Thomas was a somewhat negative person. He was a worrywart, a brooder, tended to be anxious and angst-ridden. He was like Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh. He anticipated the worst all the time. Pessimism rather than doubt seems to have been his besetting sin. Not so much a doubter as a pessimist." It's a tough crowd. But more of the preaching today tends to swing the other way. Most of the preachers I read and listen to today go completely the other way on Thomas. They defend Thomas. Another Presbyterian minister might be the most defensive I've run into yet. Mary Ann McKibben Dana said he was not locked in the house with the others because he was the only one courageous enough to be out looking for Jesus. They're all huddled behind locked doors afraid, she said, and he's the only one with enough guts to be out there on the search. Well, I don't know where you land on that, but for my money, Thomas is neither hero nor villain. He's just a straight shooter who sees the world the way he sees the world. Like that group in the seminar in Columbus. Some of us shop by impulse. Some of us study every angle. Some make lists. Some need to know the people they're doing business with. We're just wired differently. And so Thomas is the patron saint of some of you in the room who just aren't going to be convinced and sell the house because your friends declared it was true. I saw him myself. Some hear the gospel truth, and the first time they hear it, it rings true and pure and right. It immediately finds resonance. And you know that the Christian faith is your home. You step out into the aisle, declare that Jesus is the Christ, follow him in baptism, and sign up to bring lemonade to the global team meeting. You're ready to go. You know right immediately that it's true. But others of you, not so much. Others of you have questions that just don't line up yet. What about the suffering of the innocent? What about the historical inconsistencies of the Pentateuch? I need answers. Measure twice, cut once. I'm not going to believe until I see the holes for myself. Well, that day in Columbus, when all of us were answering out of the different groups, I was struck by the beautiful complexity in the room. We're all wired in so many different ways. I was smiling, seeing all this delightful difference. I mean, I'm never going to make a list by the aisle, but I thought that's kind of cool. I thought, but some people in the room got angry. They insisted that their way of seeing the world was better, not just different, categorically better. If you don't make a list, you're just wrong. I can't believe you'd buy a toaster without researching toasters. You're just wrong. There are people who are so insistent that their experience of the world is the right one. And they don't think of other people as being different. Other people are just wrong. Last week, in the Easter story, do you remember, we had two characters, Simon Peter and the beloved disciple, in a foot race to the tomb. When they got there, Peter went in first. He saw the linen wrappings, the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not with the other wrappings, but rolled up in a place by himself. He's assessing all that. The other disciple went in, saw, and believed. That's it. He went in, he saw, he believed. No questions asked. He goes in, the tomb's empty, he believes. Let's go on to something else. But in today's story, Thomas is still not convinced. He's going to need more than his buddies telling him it's true. Some come to belief quickly and surely. But some, as the old folks used to say, need to agitate on it a while. It doesn't change the facts one way or the other. Jesus was dead. He was dead. He was not settled down for a long winter's nap. He was dead. And God raised him from the dead. He has conquered all fear and all chaos. He has been raised from the dead, has offered eternal, abundant life to all who believe, and this is true whether you believe it or not. But folks come to that belief differently. Doubt is not the same thing as unbelief. The opposite of belief is apathy. Doubt at least has some movement, some energy. Doubt keeps asking questions and looking under the cushions. Frederick Buechner once wrote, "Doubt is the ants in the pants of faith." We all come to faith differently. If you're like the beloved disciple, you might be one of those who just sees, believes, ready for what's next, and your experience in this church is honored. That kind of quick decision is an authentic decision for Christ, and it is honored here. But if you're still doubting, if you're still searching and learning and scratching and not sure, your experience is honored here too. We all get there differently. In the end, Thomas gets what he asked for. A week later, and this is important, if he were a non-believer, he would have moved on. He'd be fishing or looking for a new job or something. But a week later, he is still within the community, still doubting, still asking, still searching, but he's still in the community. And although the doors are shut on their gathering, Jesus comes through the locked door and says for a third time, "Peace be with you." And then he looks at Thomas and says to him directly, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand, put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." And Thomas answers, "My Lord and my God." And then Jesus blesses. He blesses all of you who will not have the same experience of touch that Thomas had. Jesus blesses all of you who identify with Thomas by saying, "Blessed are you who have not seen and yet come to believe," which actually is all of us. Nobody in the room has had a chance to touch the hands and the side. But we are blessed when we come to the place where we declare that the victory over death was meant for me. Some of you peeked in, saw an empty tomb, you were ready to believe right then. Some of you might be having that experience today, a declaration that I am ready to profess Him as Lord and ready to get on with it. If that's the case, we welcome you. We welcome you into the waters of baptism, into membership in this church, into all of the inheritance of the abundant life. But others of you may need a while. You may need more time to study and ask and push back and grapple some more. But when you are ready, the invitation to believe is always open. For Thomas, it was a full week later than the rest of them. But grace won. So stay with it, because grace always wins. Let's stand and sing and respond to the grace you're feeling in your heart today.